Hello, I'm Eric Glass. I joined the UDR in 1970 in a wee place up called Marhabile, up very close to the border. In 1972 I was under a very high threat up there. The army actually moved in with me and gave me cover for 3 months, and then they decided that they couldn't cover any longer, so they said I should move. I moved then to Enniskillen overnight. The children, even my 2 children that was at school, they didn't even know. We took them out of school at 12 o'clock and we didn't even tell the teacher that they wouldn't be back. We had to get away that quick. We moved to Enniskillen. Everything went quite well then until 78. And in 78 I was driving a van with 8 workmen in it, 7 and myself was 8. We were working in a wee place called Garrison, and as we were driving along the road, there was 2 of us, me and another fellow in the front. There was a seat across the back of the van. There was a common walk-through van. There was a seat across the back of it, and there was 3 men on that seat. In the back of the van, there was a wheelbarrow up where the 2 mudyards were, and there was 2 men sitting on the mudyard and 1 man sitting in the wheelbarrow. As we were driving up the road, there was a burst of automatic gunfire, and it scared the life out of me. The windscreen come in with an awful bang, and the van almost stopped. I got her going again, drove on down the road, said across, as anybody heard it, nobody spoke, drove on down to the wee crossroads, about 2 miles further down, and pulled in at a shop. As I went to the shop, I run round the corner, I met the man and I said, "Have you a phone?" And he said, "Yes." We went round to the back door of the house. The lady came out and she said, "Oh, I can't let you into the house. You're all blood, your face and everything." She says, "I have small children in the house, I can't let you in." But I said, "Can you use the phone?" "No," she says, "Can you not drive on?" And I said, "I'm sorry, I can't drive on." And he said, "Right, I'll use the phone." So I went back to the van. When I went back to the van, the boys were all out of the van, only 1 man. He was laying between the front seats and the back seat. I went over to him. He was quite bad condition. I opened up his shirt and that. There was quite a hole in his chest. Then the ambulance arrived. We got back into the ambulance. I didn't want to go in the ambulance, but there was 2 ambulances there. And as we were coming in the road, one of the ambulances had stopped, where the man that was injured had died. We went to the hospital and got sorted out then from that. Then everything went well then. They took me off the van and off the country and brought me in to the town hall to work at the door and to drive the official car. I didn't like being inside, so the next thing the job come up of a dog warden. I took the job as dog warden and really enjoyed working at it. And this morning, about the month of September, I was sitting in the house one evening and I got a phone call that somebody wanted to see me. They were coming down to the house. I said to them not to come down to the house, that I would meet them up at the UDR centre. I met them up there. They told me that I was under very high threat and to be very careful. I went home. I was very careful after that for a lot of days. Then months went by, Christmas come and went, and you start to, nothing ever happened. So I started to get kind of careless again. And in February, my wife worked in the hospital at the time, and she started always at 7:30, and she always brought me tea and toast up to bed. I was spoiled a wee bit. I got me tea and toast, and then I always got up and left the house at 8 o'clock. But that particular day, I must have slept, I fell asleep again, and I didn't wake until 8:10. I jumped up quick, got dressed, got something to eat, and away out to where I had the dogs. I went out to the dog pound, and when I was half roads out, I realised I had no go. I had left the gun sitting at the edge of the bed. Didn't pass any remarks. As I say, the threat had worn off me and that at that time, didn't pass no remarks. Always made it into the town hall for 10 o'clock tea. Got in, was taking the tea whenever I heard my secretary on the phone taking directions. I said to her, "Is that for me?" She said, "Yes." I said, "Can you pass it through to me?" So she passed the directions, or she passed the phone over to me, or put him through to my line. And I spoke to this man, and he said to me, "Did you hear about my little dog?" I said, "No, I didn't." He said, "I had a wee sheepdog here, and we thought the world of it, but the wee niece was down at the weekend, and it bit her in the face. What should we do?" And I said, "Well, if it was my dog, a bit of child, I wouldn't keep it." Well, that's what I was afraid. He said, "I'm afraid of it. She was down quite often, and I'm afraid of it doing the same again." He says, "Could you take it away from me?" And I said, "No problem." I said, "What way do you want it done?" Because some people wanted you to put them down at the house so as they could bury the little dog. Other people didn't want to see what happened to the dog, that you take it away. And I told him, I explained that to him, and he said, "No," he said, "I'd want you to take it away." And I said, "That's no problem." He said, "I have a wee bit, what time," he said, "can you make it down to the house?" I said, "I'm sorry, I can't give you a time. I'm quite busy, but I'll lift it sometime today." Well, he says, "That's a wee bit of a problem, because I know," he said, "that you have a wee farm to get built, that I'm giving the dog of my own free will." And he says, "I have a few cattle away from the house," and he says, "I like to give them a wee lock of meal and a lock of hay." And he said, "I mightn't be at home. If you can't, could you give me some sort of a time?" And I said, "Right, I'm taking tea, I have to go out and get diesel. I'll be with you in an hour and a half." He said, "That's great." So I went out, got the diesel, come down the road. As I was coming down the road, I was coming by the end of the road I live in. I looked at my watch, and it was just round 25 past 10. And I said, "You know, I have 3 calls to do down that area. I'll not make it back for my lunch. I'll go in and get a box." So I went in, and I got a couple of sandwiches, put them in a box, filled a flask, walked down to the room and lifted the gun. I don't know why I lifted the gun, but I lifted the gun. Brought it out. It was a lovely sunny morning in February. Took off my jacket, set the gun in on the passenger seat, and threw the jacket on top of it. And drove out the road. Just before I got to the house, I had a radio in the van, and the radio went, and it was my secretary again, inquiring something about a dog. It wasn't too serious, I know. And I looked over, and here the gun had slipped out from underneath the coat. So at that time, we were only after getting issued with P5s, and they had told us that it was quite safe to put a round up the breech. So I lifted the gun, I don't know why, and cocked her and sat her down under my coat again. When I drove on then, when I turned up the lane for the house, there was a shed on the left-hand side of the lane with a barra sitting out a little bit. I stopped at the barra and I said, I'm going to have to get out and move this barra, stuck on my road. And then I suddenly realised, no, if I go up on the bank, I'll get by it. So it was quite a straight lane, and I think the idea of the barra was, so if I seen something up at the house, if I reversed back quick, I'd hit the barra. So I drove up onto the bank, got by without moving the barra, on up and turned down onto the street. Whenever you went up, you were again about the gable of the house. I turned down, left onto the street. Look, there was a back door. It was an oldish house. There was a back door, and there was a key in the back door. And I said, great, he's at home anyway. And instead of, just when I pulled up, if they would have waited a couple of minutes, I would have got out and went over to the back door, but they didn't. Just as I pulled up, two men come roaring out. One come roaring out of a shed, and the other come roaring across the street, roaring, "IRA, get out of that effing van, get out, get out." I whipped up the gun quick, and what do you do whenever you go to the range? You cock the weapon. I cocked the weapon. The round fell out because afterwards the police and that couldn't realise why there was a round in the van, but that's why. The round fell out because when you go to the range, the first thing is cock the weapon, and that's the first thing I thought, cocking the weapon. I fired 3 quick shots out through the passenger's door and swung round quick, and the man at the driver's door was opening the door. He had bind a twine round him and the gun across his chest. I immediately pushed the door. When he seen me with the gun, he run straight across the front of the house to the far gable. I jumped out. I looked out, there was a wee wall in front of the barn. I was going to jump out over the wee wall and try and go down the field, but it was a big field and I knew I was going to be caught there. So I run round, left the door open, run round and lay down at the front wheel. And there was quite a few shots fired then, and it seemed like a long time ago, it was only maybe minutes. But I was firing odd shots back, and somebody fired a shot and it busted the wheel of the van just at my head. And the noise of that, it really scared me. And I said to myself, what am I going to do? Will I get up and run? Or what? I'm going to have to take aim shots because I'm wasting ammunition. So just at that, somebody at the top of the house put their head round the corner, come round a wee bit. I could see them, to try and see me. And I took as nice aim as I could, and I pressed the trigger, and nothing happened. I took the gun down from me down a wee bit and looked in, the magazine empty. I knew I had another magazine in my coat, but it wasn't the van. So I jumped up quick, run round the door of the van, pulled out the coat, knocked the empty magazine onto the ground and whacked on the full one. Whenever that was happening, 2 men hopped out over a small bank at the top of the house, up at the top, and come down firing at me. I got the magazine whacked on, and they were down almost beside me with the gun to an automatic, and they were pebbling my legs at that time. And I returned fire, and somebody kind of staggered over by the side of the house and got round the corner again. And just then, somebody roared, 2, 3 and 4, run for it. And the next thing, they whizzed down by me, down the far side of the van, and down. I immediately watched them. They went down the field. 2 of them I know went down the field. So I thought that you couldn't move. I looked down and the blood was running into my boots, and I could see the trousers was ripped, and the bone was out of the leg a wee bit, out through the flesh. So, but I thought you could hop, even with the leg broken, you know, with one leg you could hop a bit, but I couldn't move it. I was just stuck to the ground, seemingly. So just to that, the old man that owned the house, he came out and he said to me, "Are you all right?" And I said, "I'm not too bad." I said, "Have you a bone in the house?" He says, "I have." I said, "Can you ring and get me help?" And no, he says, "I can't." He says, "They told me if I used the bone that they come back and shoot me. And I can't ring." But he says, "If you can get in, you can ring." I said, "I can't move. Have you a stick? Would you have a stick or anything?" And he went into the house. He come out with a wee 2x2 piece of a stick about 2 foot long and handed it to me, and I said, "No, that's no good. It's too short." But with it, and with the side of the van, I got up a wee bit and I could get a look into the pantry and I seen a sweeping brush. And I said to him, "Give me out the sweeping brush." So he got the sweeping brush, he came out onto the street and he knocked the head of it. And I said, "No, put the head back on it." So he put the head back on it and he said, "You're awful." He said, "The blood's running at you everywhere." And I said, "No, I'm not too bad." I said, "Give me the brush." So he gave me the brush, got it onto my arm, I got into the house. And then I started to think, at that time you didn't, if you lived in the area, you didn't need a code. You just needed the number. And I started to think, and I said to him, "Are you in Ballyke here?" He says, "I am." And I said, "Good, 212. So I lifted the phone and I rang 212. I knew that was the police station. The police answered it, and it was the sergeant, and he said to me, "Eric," he said, "Where are you?" And I tried to tell him as well as I could. And then he said to me, "Lay down the phone, hang up." He says, "There's only 2 phones in here. The army's on one and I want to make a call on the other. Hang up and we'll bring you back." And I said, "That's okay." But he says, "We'll get you help as soon as possible." But I said that was all right. And then I looked out and I could see this man laying on the street. And I didn't know what to do. And I thought to myself, that man's going to get into the hospital. He's going to get the same care as me, and maybe better. I'm going to make sure he doesn't. I lifted the brush again, and just at that the phone rang, and I answered the phone, and it was the police. It was Noddy Clark, a policeman. I was on the phone, and I said to him, "I have a wee bit of business to do. I'm laying down the phone, but I'm not hanging up. I'll be back in a second." I went out onto the street. I had the gun in my hand. I was going to put 3 shots into this man's head. I took cold feet. I started to shake. I said, "No, I wouldn't for the word touch him." And I walked back into the house and lifted the phone and shut it. The next thing, the helicopter come. It hovered round for a wee while. I was panicking a bit. The next thing it dropped off, as I didn't know at the time, but it dropped off me and went back a bit. And went back towards Anslow, and I started to shout about the phone that why were they not coming to take me out? And I could hear the army on the other line calling the helicopter to come back and take me out. They took me out, and I went in a Skilling hospital. I was there for overnight. Then I went to Belfast the next morning, and I was there for 6 months after that. And that is really my story. The biggest problem was the wife, the children. They all suffered an awful lot. My son was just home from the army, and he suffered a lot as well, because the wife was up with me most of the time, and that left him on his own. and he suffered a lot, and my whole family done, only for them, I don't know where I'd be today. But they kept me right. The wife washed me, showered me, and done everything for me. So Sam, I had to thank. After all my incidents that had come through, I was very honoured by Her Majesty the Queen. I got the QGM, Queen's Gallantry Medal, for my first incident in '78. And for my second incident, we had a private meeting with the Queen and got the DCM, Distinguished Conduct Medal. Myself and my family are very proud of these medals.